So, episode 5 of Seraph of the End Season 2, it was actually a pretty simple episode, so this review should not be that long. But this episode, we see now that we have the Shinobu Squad and the Neurakumi, I believe the name was, but we have this spear guy and the Shinobu Squad. We have them now teaming up, and we see that they were going over this mission, and we see now that their target was like some vampire noble who normally comes to like this park every single day. And so we see now that he was not taking this mission that seriously, and we see them that the other squad was definitely kind of getting fed up because they already did not want to like train these kids about teamwork, and now they actually have to do a mission together with them. So obviously, these other guys were definitely looking down on these kids, and so we see that the reason why the reason why he was not taking it seriously is because he already knew what he had to do, but more importantly, he just wanted to protect his comrades. And we see now first to like you here, he did not even bother learning what this guy's name was, but in fact he actually learned every single name of the other squad because they were like comrades that he actually wanted to protect. And that right there definitely gave you some very, very cool respect points from me because we see his character continuing to grow and mature. And I will say that I'm definitely like the turnaround, especially compared to season 1. And so right now that when the mission gets started, we have Shinya and Yoshi, and we see them now hiding in some tower, and Yoshi was like just so paranoid. We see him now feeling so nervous because obviously with like him being on the sniper team with like Shinya, they obviously had to do the first strike, and right now all that pressure was like getting him. And we see now that like Shinya, this guy's like actually pretty cool because we see him now giving like Yoshi some tips, and that right there definitely helped him. And so right now we finally see this noble, and this guy was like wearing a top hat, and he had like what pretty makeup on. And so right now he was talking to like this older vampire, and we see him now drinking on the blood, in a wine glass, trying to be all fancy, but this blood now belonged to a 4-year-old girl, and that right there was actually confirmed. And so we see now that Shinya and Yoshi, they were like biding their time, and then we have them attack out of nowhere, and somehow that vampire picked up on them fast enough where he actually grabbed the vampire he was talking to and used this guy as a shield. And I will say that right there was messed up because we see now that the aftermath of that was obviously this guy was gone and only an arm of him actually remained, and that right there was just so messed up. And so now we have everybody, moving in to take on the vampire or the noble because that right there was their real goal. And we see now that when the vampire noble actually used his sword, he was like able to use some kind of attack that was actually able to reach the tower. And we see now that even when that tower was now falling, Shinya was like, we will stay here and take out as many nobles as many normals as we can. And that right there was like definitely awesome. Now we know why Shinya is probably like the top sniper out of everyone in the Moon Demon Company, or matter of fact, out of the whole army in general. Shinya is probably like the top sniper guy. And so right now, where we have everybody, charging toward the noble, we have all these like normal vampires there, and luckily we see that now that Yoshi, because all those arrows, were obviously green, he took out all those normals, and that right there was impressive. But then again, these normals were like mainly fodder, so I can't really say if that right there was like rather, plot armor, getting rid of them, or maybe Yoshi really has, improved, just that much. And so eventually now it was just a noble aid to everybody else. And we see now that even though this guy was obviously outnumbered, he can definitely hold his own pretty well. We see that at first they can hardly, even touch this man because he was just doing, like so freaking well. And so right now we see at one point where we have at one point, we have this guy, fending off the spirit guy in Shinowa, and we see now, it wasn't Shinowa, but I believe it was you. he like able to fit off both of them, and we see now that he actually grabbed Shinra's weapon, and so we see now that when a Lancer guy was like going to come in to attack him, we have the noble actually using her as a shield to protect himself, and that right there had caused you here to actually spring into action and protect Shinra, which definitely kind of like messed things up. I really thought things here will actually go south between everybody, but no, they all kept their cool, and eventually, they were able to actually, cut off the arm of the noble. And so right now, this guy was like really not giving him this guy was not giving him an opening, and so obviously now they have to think of some kind of plan, that way they can actually take it down. And so we see now that out of all people, Kimi here, he actually had this plan that I was not sure if it was going to work or not, but we see him now using like one of his swords and actually digging it into the arm that was like cut off of the vampire, because he asked them that the vampires, they can actually reattach their limbs, but he asked them if they can actually grow new ones, because we see now that while he was like digging his sword into his arm, that right there was like getting rid of it, as we saw it breaking apart, turning dust and like floating away. And so right now, Kimi was like really able to push this guy buttons, and eventually he actually made the vampire lose his composure, and this guy just snapped, and we see him now, charging right at Kimi. But luckily we have Shinya and Yoji. They have finally came back down, and we see them now able to slow down this vampire, long enough where you here can actually, get behind him. And so right now, when the noble and you clash, we see now you goes down, but this vampire was like obviously hurt a lot worse, as we see now how he had this like large cut on his chest. And so right now you thinking that maybe it'll be open for the vampire, but no, we see now that it was still alive and kicking, and we have the spirit guy sending one of his men there, to finish it off, but the vampire, actually stopped her and took her sword. And so you think now maybe he would kill her, but no, we see now that the vampire actually killing himself, because, at one point we saw that they almost took him prisoner, but the vampire had to like cut off his own arm. So obviously now, obviously the vampire knew their intention, and there was no way that he would let them, take him prisoner. So he chose to like take his own life. And also, it was like definitely interesting to see all these like different weapons, show off all these like different kind of skills, because we have Mitsuba summoning like these two blue fire looking demons. We have this one guy who can use a sword and make it into like some kind of chain to where he can, immobilize a foe, because that right there is where we have the vampire, cut his own arm. And so I do wonder what else, the members of the Spirit Guy squad can do, because right now we just saw them use their sword normally, and I do wonder what else, Mitsuba can do besides, at least in a shockwave and summoning those demons. But with the vampire, now that they were all celebrating, but I do wonder if they realized that the vampire, took his own life. So really that right there can't be, really called a win, because they were actually supposed to capture the guy, but he killed himself. And so now going to the Guren side, we see now he was struggling, against this rather large vampire. And so we see this guy definitely look, rather old. And for some reason, Guren was like fighting him on his own. But eventually, Guren got in one good hit. And we have this like vampire, talking to him, saying, don't think you can get away with this. And we have Guren, telling him shut up, and just, straight up killed him. And so right now, with that guy dead, we have Guren, realizing just how strong these like nobles are. And then we have his squad coming and saying, that right there was not easy. But Guren is like, if taking down one noble if this hard, imagine taking on the others that they have to face. And right now, we learn now that, Guren has no problem dying, because if he does die, then that means that, Shinya will take his place, and I definitely have mixed feelings about that. Hopefully Guren, will not try to like rush into his death, because we see now that in the beginning of the episode, once again he was like giving another speech, and we see now that he had told him that their main goal was not to come back alive, but to in fact come back with victory. And maybe if victory came at the cost of his own life, he would not mind paying that. So that right there definitely has me worried. But we see now that one man from like a different squad that Guren has sent on another mission actually came to him, and we see him fatally wounded because this guy had a hole in his chest. And so we see now that when he told Guren what was like going on about how the City Hall team, they were like taking out 45 men are dead and 19 more were killed, and the rest were like taken as hostages. We see now that they want Guren to come to some certain location. And so we see now that the guy who actually used smoke as a weapon, we see that somehow he has, I'm guessing that maybe he has a poisonous gas, and we see him now, or we have Guren telling him to help this guy, put him out of his misery. So I'm guessing that gas, it gave him, a painless death. But obviously that right there helped him die. And so we see now, Guren, he is now more determined than ever, to actually complete this mission. And we see now that their next target will be Crowley or Crowley, something like that. But that right there was the vampire noble that we had Shinwa Squad struggling against in season 1. And so now, with him and Guren, now being forced to fight, that right there should be very good. But also in the opening, we see you fighting him, because right now the Guren squad will meet up with the Shinwa squad and also with the Spirit guys. So right now we're gonna have a team full of badasses, forming into one and going against these nobles, or at least one noble in particular, because I'm guessing that the Crowley, he must be in charge of the nobles that are like gathered, all together. But overall, this episode, to me, it was definitely good. Like I said, to me, it was like very simple, because we had like one fight against this noble who in fact took his own life. But seeing Guren struggling a bit and barely getting a win, that right there was like also interesting, because even though Guren, is a beast, he also needs to get stronger as well. But as always, don't forget to let me know what you guys thought. And please don't forget to like and subscribe, because it really helps me out. But as always, you guys take it easy, and I will see you all next time.